Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Joe Tossi from TechTables.com, and you're listening to the Public Sector Show by TechTables. This podcast features human-centric stories from public sector CIOs, CISOs, and technology leaders across federal, state, city, county, and higher education. You'll gain valuable insights into current issues and challenges faced by top leaders. Through interviews, speaking engagements, live podcast tour events, we offer you a behind-the-mic look at the opportunities top leaders are seeing today. And to make sure you never miss an episode, head over to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and hit that follow button and leave a quick rating. Just tap the number of stars that you think this show deserves. Welcome to the Public Sector Show by TechTables. Super excited to have you all here. We'll just kick off with a short intro about yourself.
Hi, I'm Jeff Beckstrom, and I am the manager for the development team for digital engagement for Seattle IT, information technology. I've been in this role for about 7 years. Prior to that, I was the citywide web team manager. I've been with the city for 24 years, and during that time, I've always worked with the Seattle.gov website and various other communication tools. I manage a team of 6 very capable developers, and we do a lot of integrations with the web content management system and WordPress blogs and other integrations.
Fantastic. Michal?
I'm Michal Perlstein. I lead the digital engagement team. And I guess I should say what that means, because it could be different everywhere. We manage a suite of products like the website, blogs, and newsletters. But in parallel, we also manage the digital experience for the city for all public-facing web applications through digital policies, design requirements, and things like that. I've been here about 7.5 years. And before that, I was at managing products in K-12 public education in Seattle and New York. And before that, I started my career in management consulting, and then I was in a variety of product strategy and organizational development roles.
I'm Michal Ringgold, and I lead the user experience team, which is 3 designers. And I have been in the design field for about 20 plus years. I've worked in small business, e-commerce, enterprise, and I've been with the government, this particular city of Seattle, almost 6 years. The thing that I really like this compared to the other arenas of design is that being a public servant is really a powerful role.
Hi, my name is Dennis McCoy. I lead the product team in digital engagement. We've been together about 7 years now, and we work with the communications leads from departments to help support their business needs.
Michal, you were hired to build this team from scratch. What was the biggest challenge in creating a cross-functional team? How did you leverage the diverse domain knowledge from across the various departments?
The challenge was that the planned vision didn't necessarily align with the resources available. Instead of hiring to fulfill roles that were brand new to the city, like a user experience program, because we were as a result of IT consolidation, all of the employees already were tagged and, were already assigned to our team. Basically, we had to figure out how to bring people up to speed, because something like user experience, people had a lot of interest in that, but not the deep skills that would make someone a competitive candidate to be a UX designer. So it was a bit challenging. But on the other side, the people in the team had deep institutional knowledge. They'd been here for a long time, but most importantly, they'd been in all different departments before all being consolidated into IT. They had this great perspective on each department's programs, services, their customers. So we had all of that knowledge coming in, and then that's kind of gave us a higher level to start with. And then now we can still use that knowledge, and they have established relationships. And relationship building is a huge part of any new service or new team as well as existing teams. So I was really grateful for all of that, because my colleagues are the ones who helped me when I was new.
That's great. So when you started building this team from scratch, I imagine you probably had to pitch the vision for UX to get the buy-in. That might not be like a familiar term if I roll the clock back 7 years ago. Can you just maybe lay the landscape of the vision that you had for the city of Seattle IT?
First, it wasn't my idea. It was already planned by others. That might have been some of the people here. So when I was hired, it was already mapped out what the digital services team would look like and which teams would be included. And so UX was already decided to be one of them. But you're right, it doesn't mean everyone bought in, or that everyone in the city was ready. And so it was part of shifting the culture. It was painful sometimes for people. There were also a lot of shifts, though, with consolidation. Even people having to manage web content through easy tools, but having the technologists do the design and the development was a big shift for them. But I think that when we want to educate people, the UX team that Michel's leading now and was part of for years before that did a lot of great things in addition to our actual work and the initiatives with just education and awareness. Totally self-generated, just decided to put on workshops and just invite people, learn about design thinking. Let's do hands-on exercises, or let's even talk to other IT colleagues and teach them what journey mapping is. And I think it really helped because there were a lot of low stakes, like no urgency, no emotion attached kind of opportunities to learn about it. And then of course the team is fantastic. When people do work with them on an actual project, people seem to walk away like, wow, that was great. I see it now, I get it. And so then we build these people who are championing this along in different departments. So I think it's worked out really well.
I was thinking about this after I met with all of you, but there's a great study that McKinsey did on the S&P 500 for the companies, and they had a design index, and those who valued design within their companies, I think outperformed by 30% or something compared to companies who just didn't give a rat's tail about design. And have you seen that, Michal?
Yeah,
Do you know what I'm talking about?
absolutely. Yeah. No, I don't remember the statistics, and I'm curious to see, because it's a relatively older one that I saw. I wonder what it's like now. But absolutely, I remember when I was getting into user experience, because I had been a graphic designer, the person that I interviewed, she was doing that sort of work. She said, whatever you do, get with a company that really appreciates design and not just development. And now that's a common thing. They realize that, oh my gosh, user experience design can make us money and also make our customers happy.
I forget who I mentioned it to, but I actually worked for a product strategy, kind of boutique consulting company. Okay, a number of years ago. I was much younger. I was super lucky the CEO just hired me. But I worked for a guy who was a product manager / the COO of the company, and I would go around to Sony and Airbnb and SpaceX, and we were making these pitches, and I'd work with the design team in Slack. This is before Slack was even popular. And it was such a great experience for me that even today, one of the things, like if you go on TechTables.com, you'll see that we care about design. I've got this very stickler presentation, like when we have decks or whatever. The brand isn't just a bunch of nice colors. You want to exude the emotion that what you want, right? And I could feel the same thing from the city, because the city has very strict brand guidelines, which tells you there's a specific story that the city really wants to tell its residents, right?
I'm glad you picked up on that.
Yeah. Dennis, you've been with the city, and I love this. And I had 29 years.
Yes.
I'm 35 years old. That's true. But so you've seen just the evolution of services firsthand. How has the consolidation of the IT departments across the city changed the way that you approach citywide digital initiatives?
Good question. So coming onto this team, we really took on the equitability, accessibility, and consistency aspect in our business process. And I didn't really have that prior to consolidation. So my focus really was developing web solutions for the client, for the customer in the department. And so mostly focusing on delivering whatever was needed there. And it wasn't really centered around the user experience, similar to the talk that you're just having. And so coming to this team, we were really supported in that. And so we were able to anchor on these federal laws and rules and guidelines. And so we post about this on our website, that we commit to equitability, accessibility, consistency, and we follow that. And we leverage that partnership with our partners in departments. And for this project, for the major event pages, we took that trust that we had built with them, and we looked across our Seattle.gov platform and noticed that there were some disconnects in the ways that departments were responding. And so we took that problem and we really wanted to hone in and solve that for all our users. And so the major change and difference is like developing these solutions that meet all public needs, everybody who comes to visit Seattle.gov.
Great. Let's get a little more specific. Can you talk about the major events page?
So it's actually a set of pages that were developed, and winter weather page was one of the first iterations of these major event pages that we tackled. And yeah, so working across city departments, especially with our Office of Emergency Management and the partners there, partners in the mayor's office. We helped develop a central place now where the public can come find information about our utilities or closures or whatever type of information they're looking for that as it relates to that major event.
Fantastic. Jeff, building on what Dennis just shared about the major event pages, walk us through, we talked about the evergreen content.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Can you tell us how this approach has helped the city respond more effectively and prepare for future events?
Yeah, so on our major events pages, Dennis had mentioned winter weather. A lot of the times, the content that you'll find on our winter weather pages is what we would term evergreen content, which is applicable at any time of the year. Earthquakes is probably a better example, just because we have lots of tips on earthquake preparedness, what to do during an earthquake. Also, tips and tricks like having a plan for your family, having emergency kits, things that you can do right now to prepare for an earthquake. But on our side of the shop, we have the major events pages that are published out to the public right now that has a lot of that helpful content. But if there were to be an earthquake or a major event, we would be able to spin up another version of that also has a lot of placeholder content. So we're not scrambling during the event or right after the event to come up with content and trying to get that message out, especially as the Emergency Operations Center is spun up and the Joint Information Communications staff. We'd be involved with some of that messaging, and the permissions are also shared on those templates. So the subject matter experts and people out in the departments can also directly contribute to those pages. Also placeholder content for things that we'd be anticipating, such as GIS maps for earthquake and other things like that. So we have stuff in the can ready to pull out if necessary, but during most of the time in the year, it's more focused on tips and tricks, evergreen content that's appropriate now.
Yeah, that's great. What's been your kind of favorite project to work on, especially like just in the CMS structure? Is there something that kind of spoke to you?
Yeah, this was definitely a fun project with a lot of challenges because we had a lot of stakeholders from a lot of different departments. And so we had to figure out what is that permission model going to look like? And how are we going to make sure that the people have access to the right content inside of the content management system? So that was definitely posed a bit of a challenge based on the content management system that we had and some of the roles and things. So we had to rethink some of that stuff. So that's been definitely a fun project. There was a project that I was working on early on. It was interesting. We were talking about AI earlier today. And we were doing kind of a pilot project with Microsoft Azure. And we were actually doing analysis of council member videos and translating them using AI technology and facial recognition. And that got shut down real quick. But we had a lot of fun and learned a lot.
No, that's, I can imagine it got shut down quick. No, I love this, the CMS structure. It's such a small level, but you guys have much larger scale, obviously, but I run a content business, right? So I totally get just even the back end of 200 podcast episodes and each of those pages. And then even with internal, I've got my own internal system, and there are tens of thousands of pages from intro calls, podcasts, keeping stuff like a slide of the S&P 500 design index, and keeping all that, and then just figuring out, actually just on the side random note, but just on the permission level, when I hired my assistant, even for that, I have different team spaces, but I didn't want to expose every team space. New challenge. So I was like, oh, I need to upgrade to like the business enterprise version of this so that I can hide some team spaces so that not everyone is exposed to everything I have going on. And anyways, I thank you for sharing. Yep. Michal, you emphasized the importance of human-centered design. We were just briefly talking about this. Can you talk about a specific example of how user testing or feedback significantly improved a city service, a website feature, or anything in particular related to the major event pages?
Yeah, as Jeff had pointed out, we and Dennis too, the pilot was the winter weather webpage. And the reason we were doing that was to be efficient when these emergencies hit and have something ready instead of scrambling internally and then also meeting the needs of people who might be dealing with it. In terms of the major, so then we did the winter weather pilot. As Jeff had pointed out, that included, we started with subject matter experts across the city. So there were at least 25 interviews, 16 departments or so involved. all the major players in infrastructure, the utilities, Department of Transportation, all of that. So we had to figure out what is it we're trying to do here. We don't just test. What is the problem we're trying to solve? So that's the problem we were trying to solve. And out of that, we learned from user behavior, we were understanding what was the critical information that people need. How do we consolidate that information across 40-some departments? And where are the gaps? And where are people actually getting the information? And you talked about, but trust is the main thing with government. We have to make sure that the content's trustworthy and it's current. And so, yeah, we tested our web. I just want to back up and say winter weather is one page. We've done heat.
Give me all the pages.
Yeah, the heat.
Give me all the pages.
Smoke, flooding, earthquake. So we do earthquake preparation, which is what you would see now, but we also have response, as Jeff had pointed out. That was major. So I learned a lot about emergency management, tiny bit in the whole spectrum of things. But yeah, understanding what the users needed. So we learned what content was missing. For instance, believe it or not, in the winter weather, they're like, we want to know the weather. They're not going to come to our page for the weather, but if they land on our page, they want to look at the weather map. I'm like, okay. And then pet safety, like that was a really important thing for people. We learned that. And so as a result of that pilot, like I said, we ended up with all these other major event pages. And the next phase, working with emergency management team, is to have a landing page because there are other emergencies. Like today, not to cause any hysteria, but like cyber security threat is a big thing. I imagine we'll have a page for that at some point. Hopefully never have to bring the response page into view. But just up in terms of, like what Dennis was saying, we used to just do what stakeholders want, but now we're listening to the users. And as a result, we have really good content and it's iterative. So it's not just like we put this page up and it's done. We could potentially go back to more user testing.
I love the distinction that you made between there are the end users, people who are actually consuming the content, and there are the executives. And those are often two different perspectives. But figuring out when you're asking the question, what problem am I trying to solve, often we'll go back down to the end user, that then you can then tie into whatever the executive is asking. But a lot of times you get such great insight from the people on the ground, on the streets.
And there's a
right?
level in the middle. There's our internal users, because we have this decentralized content management model. So as they said, we have people editing these pages who are the communications experts in their own department. So they're subject matter experts, they're communications experts. And sometimes it's a matter of how can we build something that they can easily use. So we also have usability and that kind of lens that we're putting into that level of users as well. We want them to be able to successfully and efficiently be able to use our products in order to get the things out to the end user. So it's interesting, but we do recognize that they are a user and we don't want them to think we're overlooking them.
Yeah, that's going through, I don't know what you would call this. I want to say full stack, but I just don't like that. But yeah, going through like the whole process of, even when I delegate things to my assistant, simple examples like what's the vision, but even what are the resources and tools? What are the roles and responsibilities assigned for this? So even as simple as I am the podcast host, she is the assistant, but also I can also play another role, right? But so when you understand the roles, it makes it like, oh, okay, so here's the entire organization. We're not missing roles. Everyone's included into the fold. Super smart. McCoy, you mentioned that public sector product management is distinct from private sector approaches. And I was very curious, like, how do you balance the need for innovation within the public sector to serve all residents regardless of the tech savviness?
I think public and private sector, our aim is to have a product that users love and that they can use easily. I think the difference there is that while important metrics on that end might be related to profits and adoption, for us, we have a captive audience, but we owe them a lot. So we can't take that for granted. And I really think our key metric is inclusivity. And I think, the things we've been saying it's really what drives us to making sure, are we successful in what we're delivering? I think the ethical and legal responsibility to serve everyone, it's exciting, but it's also challenging. So on one hand, there can be a new leader who comes in and wants us to chase a shiny object, but that could delay things that we've already committed to. I'm not saying that's happening right now. It is not. But at the same time, innovation isn't just the big shiny thing, right? Innovation can be basic product management, which is constantly refining and evaluating what you're doing and improving on it. And we always are reimagining ways to do things like the major event pages. Right? We're reimagining what's another way to share this information that's going to be more successful and received to make other people's lives easier, because that's our job as a government. How can we consolidate it and just get it for them?
I think while providing efficiencies too, because we don't want to be scrambling during an emergency. And if we have worked with our partners to have some of that messaging in place, it gives us time to get the content in place while still having something there for somebody to react to.
Yeah, and we're reimagining our solutions. We're always looking at those. We actually, even our product operations, right? The way that we work internally, if someone has an idea and sees a gap, and some other people buy in and say, that makes sense, we try it. And we've actually even created a lot of very structured processes and systems based on that continuous improvement. So I think some people think of innovation as something like new and lofty, but innovation can be constantly examining something and then being curious and open to change and growth. And I think that said, we do pay a lot of attention to what's going on in the market and new technology concepts. So I can say, like, Jeff and his team, there's always at least one major strategic technology investment going on at one time. So while we're doing a lot of the, I don't want to say basic, while we're doing our regular work and improving even our internal product operations, we're also thinking bigger in terms of design concepts, and we're thinking bigger in terms of technology strategy. It's just more low key, it's behind the scenes, so people don't hear about it until it's done.
It's a lot like the iPhone, right? So I'm an Apple user. You go back all the way, let's just go back 10 years, 12 years, or however long this thing's been around, right? The first iteration, you have the first version of that, and then Apple starts to iterate. And I get a lot of companies do this, but I'm just going to use Apple. Iterate, small changes, right? And sometimes you hear in the marketplace, Apple never makes these large jumps, right? You'll often hear that. But they're constantly tweaking and refining and compounding all of those little changes.
It's a great analogy.
Thank you. And on the content side, I think about it the same way too. A lot of people think an episode is just done, but I'm constantly tweaking what the episode pages look like. And then at scale, I can deploy certain changes, and I'm trying to make the experience phenomenal. And it doesn't seem like there's these huge jumps, but they just keep building and keep building. One day you look up, you're like, wow, we created something it didn't get here overnight. It was just a million of these changes that no one saw behind the scenes is really the reality, right? There's just so much work that goes in behind that just doesn't often get noticed.
Exactly.
Dennis, so you played a key role in developing the major event pages, which we've been talking about, and several of them. Walk us through the process of creating these pages from kind of initial idea to collaboration across the various departments. You can just talk about the life cycle of that.
We noticed departments were responding to their major events in their own way on their channel or on their channels. And it was somewhat disconnected from what other departments were doing. Sometimes there were couple departments working together, but for the most part, they were doing what they wanted on their platforms. And so we needed a way to bring this all together in one sort of central hub. And that's what we decided to do. When we took that task on internally, we met and we decided who our subject matter experts would be, the web leads from those departments. We called them all together. And at that point, we started our UX process. That's typically where the production team hands off to the product team hands off to the UX team, and they work their magic. Could take a week, several weeks, and then they'll come back to our internal team with some prototypes, some designs. We look at those designs as a group, see what's feasible, what needs tweaking. We have our feature development process that we alluded to recently, or just here recently, but we adapted that so that we could work on this larger project. So yeah, handing it off to the UX team. They came back with prototypes. We iterated on those prototypes for a while. Once we had something solid, we took those back to the subject matter experts for sign-off. Once they bought into that, our team took that back and started to build those pages out. We build them out with certain sections that we make accessible to content editors. This allows for us to have our guardrails so we can provide the consistency, equitability, making sure that we're still holding true to what our commitment is. And once we've established the guardrails and we've implemented those on these pages, we brought the subject matter experts back together, and they've looked at the pages and satisfied with the pages. We set our own internal launch date. Once we launch the pages, we publish them out to production, and they're out there live for the public to see. And it's at that point where we start adding security and pass those off to the content editors so that they can start managing the content on those going forward. At that time of launch, we provide the users with help documents so that they can manage the components on the pages themselves. We also run them through a training on that call so they know exactly how to update those pages. Once we've finished all of that, we send a follow-up email to everybody involved, thanking them for participating in the process. And at that point, it's handed back off to them for future maintenance. And if we need to jump in to put up a response page, then we work with them on that. We communicate closely with the web leads and subject matter experts on that. Yeah, we repeated that process then for the other pages we created: smoke, heat, flooding, fire.
I just want to add one thing is that what I love is when, even though we use the words like hand off, it's not really like hand off, go do that over there. It sounds so simple, but actually it's from my perspective, sometimes I'll jump in mid-conversation and see everyone's talking to everyone. So there's a developer who's asking a question to a UX designer, and so everyone's involved. So we benefit from all these perspectives, even if someone's not just doing like their piece of the puzzle, right? And so these are really open conversations. These are Teams chats. They're just filled with everyone. Everyone's welcome to say something, whether they have a more serious role on the project or not. But these handoffs are like very quick, I should say, and very quick and very like open discussions. They're not really like handing to another team.
I do want to jump to accessibility. Accessibility is super important. I think Seattle, if I had to put it, is ahead of the curve on this because there are some upcoming ruling guidelines on digital accessibility from the DOJ. We just had a podcast in Bellevue on this. Yep, all on accessibility. Won't be out for months, but that's okay. So we'll have a link to that episode in the show notes of this episode. But I'd love to hear from you. What advice would you give to other cities looking to build or grow their own UX teams, especially around the digital accessibility and the DOJ?
Probably my first piece of advice is get started now, because it's a lot of work. But we've been at this for quite some time. We probably got really serious about accessibility for the Seattle.gov website about maybe 6-7 years ago. It's always been something that we've tried to do, but until we had like a dedicated team to actually really focus on accessibility, it was important, but it wasn't something that we focused on as much as we probably should have been at that time. But we've been at it for the last 6-7 years. And so we're in pretty good shape for the DOJ ruling, but it's the right thing to do. Whether or not the DOJ is enforcing this, our standards are WCAG 2.1 and have been for a very long time. So it's really no surprise to our organization, or it shouldn't be a surprise to our organization, that the DOJ ruling. I would also say that in addition to making sure your website and your PDFs and documents are accessible, your applications, it's a lot of maintenance. It doesn't just go away once you've completed a WCAG and you're passing all of it. It's constant maintenance. So getting started now is really critical because there's 2 years and the clock is ticking. It'll be interesting to see how that's enforced from a federal level. But again, it's the right thing to do. The other thing I would add is that training is a really big part of it. A lot of people don't have the necessary training, particularly developers, web content providers. Training is really critical, especially from an early stage, in order to make sure that your digital content is compliant.
I love that. We're going to be wrapping up. right now, but I'd love to hear from each and every one of you. Looking ahead, what's the next kind of big challenge or opportunity for the team? What are you tackling? I'm looking at you. I'll call out names.
Curious about AI and how we can use that. How can AI be a benefit to us? I know for content editing, it's going to be widely used, but in terms of product management, I'm curious how we can implement it, how we can take advantage of the technology to more benefit our products.
What would you want to see if you had a magic wand?
Something that was able to evaluate content before it goes up, provide recommendation, give alerts and warnings before
Provide accessibility checks.
Yeah.
I'm getting excited. It sounds great.
Plain language is really important.
Yeah, before things get up and out there to the public, having some sort of check, quality assurance check would be ideal.
Okay, so some AI.
Yes.
We have
Okay.
tools for after the fact, not before.
Yeah.
Okay, Michelle?
I'm going to come from a user experience lens here. I would say that we have a lot of work to do. When you asked me previously about what would I recommend for government agencies that are wanting to start and create a user experience team, there's a lot of work to do because government experiences aren't always the greatest. And to just be ready to be scrappy and be a generalist. And first and foremost is to understand your users. I know I talk about that a lot, and I will continue to do that. And to check your bias, because we think we want to do something, and again, going back to what's the problem that we're trying to solve and who are we solving it for, is really important. And the other thing I want to say is once people really get onto this user experience thing, this human-centered design, you're going to be very popular. And you're going to have, everybody's going to want to do it, you know what I mean? And you can't say yes to everything. Being in public sector environment, you're passionate about what you do. You want to help everybody, and you can't. That could be a little disappointing for those who come in, yeah, we're going to tackle this and save the world. It's done slowly and methodically.
That's great. McCoy?
I'll go back to accessibility. I think achieving that accessibility compliance will be a huge challenge for all the departments. So while our team is in good shape because we've put in the work for years, as Jeff said, but there's all the web content out there, right? Every time someone creates a presentation or puts some stuff on the website or a blog post or creates social media images, they're going to need to focus on that. And so we're getting ready to create a network of digital accessibility champions throughout the city and hoping that those people can learn and that they'll learn and educate their colleagues. But as they are identifying all their content and evaluating it and possibly remediating it, that's great, but that's for what's in the past. So similar to what Jeff said, this is an ongoing thing. So that initiative to meet that DOJ deadline won't be successful unless we're also creating a separate initiative to help departments change their business processes. So they need to incorporate an IT as well in software development lifecycle, right? But we need everyone to look at their business processes, incorporate digital accessibility, so it becomes just part of the fabric of how you create things and how it works, whether it's procurement or creating documents or writing code. And so I think that's a huge challenge. It's exciting. I'm hoping that we can do a lot there. I don't think we're in a place to give advice on this topic right now to other cities, but I'd definitely be curious what other cities, how they're tackling this without any dedicated budget. Everyone has full-time jobs and is going to try their best, I'm sure, to really meet this need, but it's going to be a lot of work.
That piece is fantastic. I'm going to clip that. Also, that's like a whole podcast episode on what you just said right there. Business process, I
was invited to your other podcast, but I couldn't make it.
She wants to come on virtual. Those are actually a lot easier, by the way, when it's just one-on-one. Because you can go a lot deeper, you can ask more questions, you can probe a little bit more. Not that this isn't fun. Jeff, take us home.
All right. Probably the thing I'm the most excited about is we're currently in progress of migrating the website to cloud. And so that's going to be a real big game changer for my team in the way that we're looking at innovation for the Seattle.gov website. Being able to leverage things like AI and other types of serverless compute to do things in more efficient ways. Also doing it securely, like some of the DDoS protection that the cloud providers offer is completely unparalleled with anything that we can provide. So that's a big initiative for us right now, and it's a lot of work to figure all that out, but we're having fun getting there. And my developers and my team are ramping up on cloud platform now, and are really excited about that.
Well, thank you all for coming on the Public Sector Show
Thanks
by
for having
TechTables.
us.
Thank you. Thanks for the
it's been
invitation.
fun.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Joe Tossi from TechTables.com, and you're listening to the Public Sector Show by TechTables. This podcast features human-centric stories from public sector CIOs, CISOs, and technology leaders across federal, state, city, county, and higher education. You'll gain valuable insights into current issues and challenges faced by top leaders. Through interviews, speaking engagements, live podcast tour events, we offer you a behind-the-mic look at the opportunities top leaders are seeing today. And to make sure you never miss an episode, head over to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and hit that follow button and leave a quick rating. Just tap the number of stars that you think this show deserves.